America, the greatest country in the world. Thanks for being here. Welcome to our special Politics by Faith, God versus Country. Got to start off here. Pretty shocking poll, Gallup poll, asking, do you love this country? Are you proud of this country? Look at that, 2001, 87% of Democrats, 90% of Republicans. Like, even that's pretty low. Like, what's up with the 10% of Republicans who weren't proud to be an American 25 years ago? But today, look at that. Democrats, 36%, only 36% are proud of America. It's gone down 51 points among Democrats. Not even proud to be an American. It's very sad. What a shame that these Democrats are proud of this country. I think this is the nicest explanation. I think it's because their entire understanding right now of America is based around politics and based around their hatred of Trump. So I think that's part of Trump derangement syndrome. But for a lot of Democrats, a lot of lefties, there are deeper reasons that they hate America, and that's much worse. So what do? Well, we need to love this country even more. We need to make up for their deficit. We are now in this final one-year buildup to the 250th anniversary of the greatest day in human history, outside of some Bible days. But in modern human history, this is it. And we cannot miss this moment. John Adams wrote a letter to his wife. He said the second day of July, 1776, it was July 2nd because July 2nd is when they actually voted on the Declaration of Independence. They didn't ratify it until 4th of July, but whatever. It will be the most memorable epic in the history of America. I'm apt to believe that it will be celebrated by succeeding generations, that's us, as the great anniversary festival. It ought to be commemorated as the day of deliverance by solemn acts of devotion to God Almighty. It ought to be solemnized with pomp and parade, shows, games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, and illuminations from one end of this continent to the other, from this time forward forevermore. He goes on and tells his wife, you will think me transported with enthusiasm, but I am not. I am well aware of the toil and blood and treasure that it will cost us to maintain this declaration and support and defend these states. Yet through all the gloom, I can see the rays of ravishing light and glory. I can see that the end is more than worth all the means. And that posterity, that's us, posterity will triumph in that day's transaction. Even though you and I should rue it, which I trust in God, we shall not. Whew, amazing. Well, here we are. He's talking about us. 249 years later, coming up on 250. Incredible. What an opportunity for us to reconnect with our founding fathers. A caller on my SiriusXM radio show made this point last week that about the Declaration of Independence. He said at the end of it, it says, we pledge our lives, fortune, and sacred honor. And he noticed, I've never noticed this before, that honor is the only one of those words that has a qualifier with it. It doesn't say we pledge our precious lives or our great fortunes. It's just our lives, our fortunes, and it doesn't say honor. It doesn't say lives, fortune, honor. It's lives, fortunes, and sacred honor. Interesting. We've done many segments before on all my different shows about how, of course, our founders were Christian, and of course they founded this country as a Christian nation. And here's a nice example. They could have just said honor, but they added sacred. What does sacred mean? Sacred means holy. It means something pertaining to God. And of course, that's what John Adams thought. In that letter to his wife, he said that this day, 4th of July, ought to be commemorated as the day of deliverance by solemn acts of devotion to God Almighty. Day of deliverance, he wrote that in capital letters. A deliverance, it's a day when God intervenes to rescue his people from danger, to rescue his people from oppression, from death. God delivers, he saves, rescues. God brought the colonists to freedom. And then led to 1776. We've given so many examples of how America was Christian in our founding and how our founders knew it. But one that I recently came across was an essay by Ben Franklin. He wrote this beautiful essay called The Ways to Wealth. Go read it. It's pretty short. It's so good. We can't go over all of it, but it's perfect. It's just classic Ben Franklin. And it's this beautiful message of how it's important to be frugal and wise with your money and the importance of hard work. And he ends it with this. He says, this doctrine, my friends, is reason and wisdom. Okay, so work hard, save your money, right? But after all, do not depend too much on your own industry and frugality and prudence, though excellent things, for they all may be blasted without the blessing of heaven. And therefore, ask that blessing humbly, and be not uncharitable to those that at present seem to want it, but comfort and help them. Remember, Job suffered and was afterwards prosperous. That's the same man, Ben Franklin, who we're told was like this atheist founder. Oh, he wasn't really a Christian, who said that at the very beginning of the 1787 Constitutional Convention. He said, we have been assured, sir, in the sacred writings, that's the Bible, that except the Lord build, they labor in vain that build it. Ben Franklin said, I firmly believe this. And I also believe that without his concurring aid, God's, we shall succeed in this political building no better than the builders of Babel. Not well. We shall be divided by our little partial local interests. Our projects will be confounded, and we ourselves shall become a reproach and a byword down the future age. I therefore beg leave to move that henceforth prayers imploring the assistance of heaven and its blessings on our deliberations be held in this assembly every morning before we proceed to business, and that one or more member of the clergy of this city be requested to officiate of that service. Isn't that amazing? So clearly we were founded as a Christian nation. When did we depart from that path? It's hard to pick a date, but it's been a long, slow, gradual loss. As the saying goes, gradually, then suddenly. William F. Buckley, he said, he wrote God and Men at Yale. He said, what has happened in 2 generations is the substantial alienation of secular culture from biblical culture. The rediscovery of sin as defined in the Bible would cause us to look up and note the infinite horizons that beckon us towards better conduct, better lives, and nobler visions. We don't look up anymore. It's all about looking in. That's what we do, we look in. But when you look up, and it's crazy, it's opposite, right? We look in and self-help is like the big thing today, or it's been for a while, like, oh, you got to look within, self-help. No, look up. That's where the help comes. Because once you look up, only then can you become a better person. And our founders knew that. They knew that we could only achieve happiness, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, by living a life of virtue. We could only live a life of virtue by being a Christian nation. It was so obvious as could be, to our founding fathers and founding grandfathers. We need to reconnect not only with our founders on this surface level or just dates or whatever. We need to reconnect with their culture, their values, their ideals, their religion. Only then can we reconnect again with the vision for this country and save this country. They knew that we could only survive with God's blessing, God's protection. We need to reach out, look back up to God, and get that blessing back. We have 2 wonderful guests today, and I cannot wait to end the show with some parts of a sermon given by Ezra Stiles. He was the president of Yale University during the Revolution and close friend with all of our founding fathers. And he gave this incredible sermon that answers this question for us today. We're very excited for our next guest, Dr. Hunter Baker. He is the provost and dean of faculty at North Greenville University, author of many books. His newest is Post-Liberal Protestants, Baptists between Obergefell and Christian Nationalism. And I also want to get into his other book, many other books, but The System Has a Soul is another one that I think will tie into what we're chatting about right now. Doctor, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Great to talk to you. Got to start off with the most basic question. Is the United States of America, were we founded as a Christian nation?
Yeah, well, I mean, so we have not been a Christian nation the same way that England was, and and sort of is in terms of having an official established church of the country. Um, but is the United States Christian in terms of its culture, in terms of its founding? And I think the answer to that is yes, particularly um, as you look at our Constitution. Our Constitution is extremely responsive to the sort of the Christian conception of human beings, and wanting to restrain power out of an appreciation of the sinful nature of human beings, and wanting to protect the freedom of human beings, because of the idea that they are made in the image of God. I mean, I think that the United States sort of philosophically, politically is incomprehensible outside of our Christian culture and history and founding.
I want to get back to politics or that political understanding too in a moment, but where would you say since then have we as a culture missed the mark? When did that really start to happen?
Well, there's lots of ways that you miss the mark. Older and new. Older, you have uh, really the missteps that we made with regard to race, and with regard to Native Americans. If you read Tocqueville's Democracy in America, he thinks that America is a kind of a miracle, and there's wonderful things about America, and America is sort of the flower of democracy. Um, and he likes the development of the people and their involvement in the government, but also he observes the way that slaves are being treated and the way that Indians are being treated at that time. Um, more more recently, we had these missteps with regard to things like abortion, and the way that we're looking at things like marriage or human sexuality. We're very much getting away from, in both directions. As I talked about, we're getting away from sort of understanding the human being made in the image of God, and with certain things that they're entitled to and they deserve, and certain immutable characteristics.
What is the role of the church in politics, in both culture and politics today? And how can the church reassert itself in that position?
Yeah, I think that one of the best things about the Reformation is that it really understood the idea of the church and the state as each having a responsibility before God. Uh, so the state is responsible for governing, for maintaining the peace, for restraining evil, for punishing those who do wrong, and the church is there to evangelize people, to preach to people, to persuade them to follow God. But this is not a totally separate, kind of hermetically sealed sort of a thing. The church is supposed to be kind of a conscience of the society, and the church is supposed to maintain a role calling the state to be the state. And what I mean by that is that the state is supposed to be responsive to God, not ignoring God, not working against God's design. And so the state is always supposed to be calling the state to respect its role before God.
In spite of that, what has the state been doing instead?
Well, so so we could think in American terms or internationally, right? I mean, in the 20th century, uh, we saw these spectacular deviations. I mean, the Nazis basically regarded the Jews and the Christians as following this sort of weird, exotic desert religion. And they wanted to be completely free of that as they were kind of reconceiving human beings and government and sort of their vision for this 1,000-year future. That's a massive departure, a rebellion against God. The Soviet Union, the same, right? The Soviet Union was trying to completely re-envision who human beings were and what freedom meant, and how human beings might be controlled and propagandized, and maybe even scientifically developed. They did not respect human rights. I think they viewed human beings as sort of infinitely malleable. And so those are massive deviations. In our own time, we have what we might call something like pagan secularism. We have this kind of aggressive sort of secularism that is not neutral, but is increasingly hostile to sort of a Christian conception of human beings.
To go back to what you said about the Nazis, how they viewed Christianity and Judaism as like this exotic desert religion. I've never heard that before, but like I could see how they could make that argument and use that to propagandize people against the faith. Like that makes sense. Why do you think our founding fathers and our founding grandfathers didn't think that? Like, why did they embrace Christianity and bring it across the pond and
Well,
instill it so deeply in the founding of this new nation, and then explicitly talk about America as a new Israel, as a second Exodus?
sure. Well, there's a joke. I remember when I was in graduate school at the University of Georgia, there was a British guy in the program, punk rock, mohawk, lots of piercings and stuff like that. And he saw me wearing a Christian T-shirt one day, and he said, England is perfect. And I said, why is that? He said, because we shipped all of our prisoners off to Australia and our religious fanatics to America. And that's the United States. The United States is where people went who were very serious about their faith, right? They were so serious they were not going to be confined by a church establishment that was sort of a pet of the state. They were going to go to the sort of the frontier in America where they could practice their faith in a very sincere and devout way. And so even though the U.S. doesn't continue to maintain that same kind of intense level that you might associate with the Puritans and the Pilgrims, it is the background, right? I mean, if we look at, say, the 19th century, the status that the Bible held in the United States in the 19th century is massive, is incredible, is completely culture forming. And even if we go up to the 1960s, when the Supreme Court takes prayer and Bible reading out of schools, that was sort of an anti-majoritarian ruling from the court. It wasn't sort of where the beating heart of the people was. So this is a country that really is hard to understand apart from that fundamental kind of Christian culture that sort of animates it.
So what do you say to those who today will be like, oh, fine, you wacky Christian, maybe that works good for you, but we're a pluralist country now. We're not a Christian nation anymore. It's a pluralist country. And that works for you. That's great, but I get to do what I want to do. What do we do with that if we want to return our nation to what it was?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. I mean, first of all, I think about C.S. Lewis and the abolition of man. Lewis is very concerned that we're going to throw away our fundamental convictions, our attachments to things like divine and natural law, and then just have human beings completely subject to conditioning by the elites. So that's one concern. And the other is that I'm not sure. Well, I'll say this. I'll say that one major strategy for dealing with this problem of pluralism that you've mentioned, because we're very pluralistic. We're a highly pluralistic country. I think the answer to that is religious liberty. I think that when we truly respect First Amendment free exercise of religion and non-establishment, then we will have a place where we are free to preach, to evangelize, to live our lives in a coherent way along with our Christian faith, and others can live in alignment with their own faith. And in that situation, I just have confidence in the Christian message. But I think that religious liberty is the key to that. I think that John Courtney Murray, back in the 60s, really had the right idea when he said that the clauses of the First Amendment are articles of peace, that religious liberty helps us to live together, not in some kind of weak compromise, but in confidence what we want to put forth in freedom.
We got about 2 minutes here. You have a book called The System Has a Soul. What system and what soul?
Yeah, by system, what I mean is the system, sort of the modern system of state and economy. Um, there's always this idea that we should divorce the faith from sort of this engine of the economy and the state. And my argument is that that is ultimately disastrous. And that where we have seen that done, we've seen people dehumanized and disrespected. So I'm arguing for that sort of understanding that I put forth further earlier, uh, that the church needs to be a conscience for the society in which it operates. And that's how we can best do our work.
We'll wrap up with one biblical virtue that you think we need more of in our country, or that you think best applies to that soul that we should inject in our system. If you had to pick one, which one would you like to highlight?
Yeah, I would say integrity. I think that people who have integrity believe and say and do things that are all of one piece, and that's what we need to pursue is integrity.
Great. Dr. Hunter Baker, Provost Dean of Faculty at North Greenville University, and his newest book, Post-Liberal Protestants, Baptists between Obergefell and Christian Nationalism. Dr. Baker, great to talk to you, sir. I hope we can do it again.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Tremendous. Thank you so much, sir. Coming up next, we have one more guest, and then I'm excited to talk about this sermon that Ezra Stiles gave hundreds of years ago, right in the beginning of our country, about what this relationship is between God and America.